Could I have your attention for a moment? Does the sound work? Yeah? Okay. Well, welcome everyone. Also for the people behind their screens with the live stream. I'm Tyler. I'm part of the Psycho committee. It's a committee related to the major that we follow here at University College Groningen, Conditioning Behavior. And we organize lectures. We have organized one already, and there will be another 2 lectures this year. And all lectures are on topics related to conditioning behavior, psychology. And today, neuromarketing and branding trust it is. I'm very happy Erik Schoppen is here, you all are here. And I think it's very fascinating how businesses nowadays try to increase their knowledge on the human mind, on the psychology behind it. And that's why we invited Erik Schoppen. And also because he has experience in consultancy, so he has worked with businesses, advised them on how to. Having that said, please keep your questions till the end of the lecture. I will walk around with a microphone, so the people with the live stream could also follow the questions. And the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Well, welcome, and thank you that you're all here. My name is Erik Schoppen. I am a writer of this book, Strategic Brand Management, and my forthcoming book, Build Bridge Bond, will be published in 2017, this year. And I'm going to show some of the examples that are presented and the models presented in the book. So for the coming 45 minutes, I'm doing my research, PhD research at the moment at the University of Groningen. My main question is, does sustainability and pro-social positioning leads to more trust and behavior change? And of course we are in the middle of a huge transition, so this is a very important question. And that's why the NVO gave me a grant to do research. So, if we talk about neuromarketing, then most of the talks and the knowledge is about measuring. I mean, you want to know inside the brain. So it's not that important what people say, but what people feel, what people experience, and of course how people behave in the end, especially in the long term, because neuromarketing is about predicting the future, predicting consumer behavior in the future. So one of the ways to do that is EEG. That's also what I use in my own research. And we measure electric activity under the skull. So it's in the cortex, and that's what you see here. So when someone has a positive emotional response on stimuli, let's say a brand campaign, then you see here P, this positive 300 evoked potential. Okay, this is boring, I know. So, but this is one of the ways how to measure neuromarketing. Another well-known principle, of course, is fMRI. It's very expensive. EEG is much more payable. And what you do is you measure the oxygen and the iron levels in the bloodstream. That's what happens. So EEG is just under the skull, in the cortex, and with fMRI you can measure much more deeper in the brain, even in the limbic system. It's very important. You will hear that term very often in this lecture. So who has a psychology background? Okay. And who not? Totally blank? Okay. Okay. So we'll keep it in between. So why is fMRI very important? It's a very hot topic at the moment. All neuromarketing agencies working with fMRI, because you can very precise measure activity within the limbic system. And that's the part here in the middle of the brain, this part. I will explain it later on. So, when you see something that you like, in this case, then the nucleus accumbens lights up. So what is the orange part here in the image. So when you see a nice face, smiling face, or when people pay really authentic attention to you, then the nucleus accumbens lights up, because it's about social status. Yeah? Paying attention to someone is energy, and it's an effort, you know. I leave everything behind and I pay attention to you. So that's very worthless. How do you call it? It's worth money. So So that's why it's important. Also, it happens with brands. If you look at a brand that you like, everyone has his own favorite brands, then also the nucleus accumbens lights up, and it's a telephone. So, and also this is important for neuromarketing because you want to know which brands are preferable with which audience, so you can predict consumer behavior. So, but this lecture is not about measuring. What I want to tell you a little story about social neuroscience. That's my own field of expertise. And it is more how we feel, react to each other, and how we make decisions. So it's also a bit the neuroeconomic side of things. So these are the topics I want to talk about you in the coming 45 minutes. I'm telling you a little bit of what is a brand exactly. I will tell a little bit about the brain, not too much because it's a very complex organ. I will tell you something about behavior, because that's what the end goal of everything of neuromarketing is predicting behavior in the future. And of course, trust. If there is no trust, then your brand is worthless. So then everyone knows your name, but no one buys the product. So you lose. So there are sort of mechanisms, and I will explain them also. So if you have a definition about branding, then it's very diffuse. Also, the definitions of trust are very diffuse. This is the definition I use. I think that the brand is the relationship between the product and the brand and the user, and the total experience. It's the total user experience that the customer has. And it's becoming from an organization with the right values. So you have matching values, and we call that brand fit. So if you don't have a fit with the brand, you don't build a relationship with that brand. There's another school of branding specialists who say there are no relationships. Personally, I don't believe that, because whole social neuroscience is about building relationships. So, and when you see a brand that you trust, it guides you in your decision making. So it's a shortcut in the brain. And that shortcut is worth money, because the better the shortcuts, the easier you make decisions, and the more the brands can earn money of you. But that's not the only goal. It's also about making a trust relationship. So, if we look at the brand, we have three main stages, transition stages, if you build a brand. One is the building phase. It's very important. It's about identity, it's about positioning, it's about cost price, and it's about how to inform your public that you exist. One of the main identity forms, of course, is the logo. So that's why you place always the logo on your product. And this is about cognitive trust. I will explain that also later on. So it's a reasonable trust. I can gather information from the net about a company. Then you have the bridging stage. So now I'm going to influence you. I'm going to convince you that this brand is the right choice. And this is on an affective level, so emotional level. And it's about social trust. It's not what I think. The most important thing about branding is that I know what you think of me when I'm using a brand. That's very important. We always use mirror behavior. So when I do something, I check to you if this is the right behavior. And you give me a positive emotional response, then of course I will do it again. So then I'm becoming a fan of the brand. So if you have friends, most likely they use the same brands. They don't tell it out loud, but of course they like it also. That's why they are your friends. Brands are very important in social relationships. And then you have the last stage, that's the bonding stage. And this is about behavior, and it's cognitive trust. And this is very implicit, so it's not what you can tell, but it's what you do every day in routine behaviors. And this is what you want, also in neuromarketing, but also in brand building, is routine behaviors, that you don't think anymore about your behavior, but just do it. So every day you go to the supermarket and you buy a product, you don't think, because you don't have time. You have much more important things to do, like checking Facebook. So you grab your stuff and you go away. Then you are a winner as a brand. So, and these are the main questions you have to ask when you build a company, an organization, or a brand. Is your reason to be? It should be very easy to answer. The reason to believe, why should people believe you? which arguments you have. This is very important to build associations in the brain. I will explain that later on. The reason to act, why should people join you? Why should people use your product? So what's the benefit of using your product? And of course, the reason to trust. Why should people trust you? Trust is very complex. I will come later on also on that. So when you have the building brain, this is what happens in the brain. It's on the right. So you have stimulus and awareness. So every time you see a logo or an identity, you are becoming aware of the brand. That's the first thing when you build trust. The second thing is priming. So when you see it over and over again, your brain is getting used, and it's building the first shortcuts in the brain when it sees the brand. So it's the second form of trust. And this is about knowledge. The more you know about the brand, the more you're going to trust it. And then the third phase is, of course, there's the biases. This is the other word for shortcut. And this is about conditioning. If you do routine behavior over and over again, it shifts. It will literally place, it becomes in another place in the brain. I will show you some examples on. And then the last stage, this is about risk-taking. If you have really trust in someone or in a brand, you are willing to take risk. So try a new product that you never have tried before. That's a form of risk-taking. So, and this is the old way marketing worked. So you have an identity, you have a product, you have a really good positioning statement. There's all the blue lines on the right. So you know your added value and your relevance and attractive design, yes, and unique features, and very big statements are written. And then, of course, you try to convince with this kind of information that people are going to use the product. The strange thing is, it doesn't work this way, because your brain doesn't work that way. This is an unconscious process. This is what we call the leap of faith. It's not reasoned. If you try a new product or you try a new relationship, you know, when you meet someone new and you like, you don't know that person. It's a leap of faith. So what happens is you make a shortcut, so to speak. In the very right, I hope everyone can read this, but here, this is the first thing the brain reacts on something, and it's an implicit emotional decision. So you see something, you like it, or you don't like it. It's the first impression. It's very hard to change. If you have a first impression of someone, or something, or a brand, it's very hard to change. It takes a very long time. And actually, within a split second, literally milliseconds, you have an implicit emotional response. So what's happening is this. You see something, you try to understand it, this is the reason to be. Is it trustworthy? Can I trust it? Can I trust that person? So when you come in a bar and you see someone standing there and you don't trust it immediately, then you walk away. You don't go to ask that guy, so are you trustworthy? Then probably you have a problem. So this is what happens all over the time. So I will show you. I have two locks. Which one do you trust the most? Number 1 or number 2? It's easy, right? It's always number 2. But why? It's totally irrational behavior. There's not a reason. Because even the logos are just made up. So it's irrational behavior. Now actually they exist, but that doesn't matter anyway. So how does that happen in the brain? So I need to explain something about the brain. The brain is developed in 3 parts. The oldest part is 500 million years ago. And it's the instinctive brain. It's from the reptilian, proto-reptilian part. So this is very instinctive, and it cannot think. And then 250 million years ago, when we had social interaction as animals, the limbic system, the emotional brain, developed. It's very important because in evolution, it's very, it costs a lot of energy and lives when you fight all the time. So, and the reptilians, when they see each other, they're going to fight, always. But when you have dogs or other animals, they will sniff, say, okay, it's okay, and we go our own way. It's much more efficient for evolutionary reasons. And only 250,000, 100,000 years ago, the neocortex developed. It's very short on the evolutionary scale. So that's hobbling behind the limbic system because it's much more older and much more powerful. So these are the questions you have to ask for yourself. If you build a brand or you want to build trust, is it what we say? No. I call this the blah blah layer. No one does what it says and no one says what he does because people don't know. If you ask them, what are you going to do? I ask that all the people all the time. What do you want? What do you want from your life? You know? People don't know. If you observe people for a longer period of time, then you will see their routine behaviors. It's much more honest. That's what people do, especially what people do when they think that no one sees them. So privacy is very important. If you don't think you don't have anything to hide, it's a stupid question. It's a stupid answer anyway. Everyone has something to hide. So the whole new development with the internet at this moment is very dangerous, I think, personally. So, but the most important question is what drives us in the long term. This is predicting consumer behavior in the long term. So if you know that, then you're probably closer to the drives of someone. So I have an example. Someone walks into the store and he wants to play guitar. That's another sound, but he wants to play guitar. So that's what he says. I want to play guitar, but that doesn't tell the salesperson not that much, right? So he's asking, what do you want? What do you want to do with this guitar? Oh, I want to make great solos. Because then everyone thinks I'm a cool guy or a cool girl. So actually that's what that drives. What it drives the person is becoming famous and wants social status. So that's the most important question that you have to answer. And now something strange happens within the brain. Because we think that we think rational, but we don't. We decide always emotional. Because our brain filters every information within the limbic system. It's the emotional brain. So we cannot think rational. We think that we think rational, but it's something else. So we rationalize afterwards. So we make a decision that feels good, and then we going to make up arguments. Okay, yeah, I made a great choice because I need it or whatever. It was a good price, you name it. So here I have two guitars. One is very cheap, for 69, it's not much. And the other one is a very cool guitar. So if you want to be a cool guitar player, which instrument would you buy? That's the most expensive one. Everyone does this. We buy fancy clothes. I call this the monkey suit. Yeah? So I wear this suit, so you believe that I have authority and that I know everything. But just a game. I could stand here with all clothes on, and you wouldn't believe me that they take me seriously. So this is my expensive guitar, so to speak. And actually, this is working for everyone. So if you're a plumber, you know, you have a leaking sink, and you call a plumber, and the guy comes, or girl, what doesn't matter. So he has this very cheaply kit from the Aldi. Be a trusted guy or girl? Or he has a very cool, expensive kit. It's from the brand Fluke. Does everyone knows the brand Fluke? No, because you're not a pro. That guy, he knows what Fluke is. He's the pro. So, you know what I do? We buy Bosch, or for God's sake, Black & Decker. Yeah. So, we are not pros. The guy with Fluke is pro. So this works with everything, with all kinds of brands, with clothing brands, with tools, doesn't matter. Another thing is, we do it unconsciously, on a subconscious level. So we're not aware of it. We don't think about this all the time. Because, of course, your brain is an organ, just like the liver or your heart. Yeah? And it functions on its own. And you're not the boss of your brain. That would be a weird idea. Who thinks he's the boss of his brain? No, it's a strange question. It's like, are you the boss of your liver? Well, drink some more, you know? So, your brain is autonomous. It works on its own, and for almost 95%. So the rational part is only 4, it's even less, but let's say 5%. So this is a conscious level of your brain. So the emotional part, that's why I make this scheme, so it's more easy to comprehend. But this part is like the filter. Every sensory information that's coming in is filtered on the emotional level, and your brain only checks on two things, pain and gain. So, is it fear? Is it dangerous for me? Then the amygdala lights up, and you can become in a fight or flight status. And then it's try to see exactly, so that's the main neurofibers that go to the visual cortex, and then it checks for a reward. What's in it for me? So your brain is very hedonistic or egoistic. So actually, this is what happens all the day. For 95% of the day, let's say 7.5 hours of 16, 17 hours when you don't sleep, you're just walking on the automatic robot style. So, and that's okay. When you drive, when you bicycle, when you eat, when you make sex, it doesn't matter. It's always only 95%. So we thought also in marketing that we should people convince with arguments, with rational arguments. But this is not how the brain works. What actually happens is when we get sensory information, it goes to the thalamus. This is like the entrance gate of your brain, and it filters always emotionally. What's in it for me? Is it dangerous, or what's in it for me? Then you have a very huge nerve fiber that goes to the visual cortex, so you can analyze exactly what you see. And of course, this is a shortcut that goes to the fear center, it's the amygdala. And that's actually what happens. And this is the two main programming rules of your brain. Rule number one is avoid pain, and rule number two is increase gain. Get social status, get rich, get successful, and get food, of course. So, and this is a very old mechanism. It's developed in evolutionary times. So it's top-down and bottom-up systems. So when you see something dangerous, let's say it's a snake, then you go to the brown in the middle of the limbic system, the thalamus. It filters, is it dangerous? It goes to the shortcut to the amygdala, that is number 3 in this image. And then you have a fight-flight response. And you jump away, or you're going to analyze it, you see it's very good, and then you will see that it's a snake, but it's not dangerous. So this is happening all the time. So here you have another schedule. So your incoming information, it goes to the thalamus. First it goes to the amygdala, and it filters on fear and arousal, because the amygdala is not only responsible for fear, but also for sexual feelings, for pleasure and arousal. So when you think of naughty things, it's a little bit dangerous, but also very pleasurable. So that's the connection with the amygdala. And then, of course, it checks on the reward system. Yeah, it's in for me, it's good. And then you're going to analyze it, how to get it. So then it goes to the prefrontal cortex. It's a very creative part of our brain. It drives you to be creative, to find ways for making money, to achieve your goals. So it's the seeker in you. You have the keeper in you, and you have the seeker in you. So the keeper that wants to hold everything is going for the safety part. You have the seeker, and it will take risk. And trust is in between the keeper and the seeker. So you like it so far? Okay. I'm just asking. So this is one of the studies done to see the function of the amygdala. You see two faces, A and B. Now they asked the participants, which one do you find attractive, more attractive? So, who dares?
Left.
On the left, yeah. Almost 90% says the left. It has to do with the eyes and the pupils. When the pupils are dilated, that's a form of trust. So when you go out and you look to your potential partner, and she has very dilated pupils, that says she's at ease. No tension. She likes you. Well, yeah, but yeah, you never know. But that's also good. So that's some endorphin. That makes this is good. It's good. So this is very important for trust and attractiveness. So, what triggers this kind of responses? You have the 5 Fs: fight, flight, freeze, feed, and fuck. Yeah, this is biology, ladies and gentlemen. So, and then have the triggers are emotional. Triggers is about reward. It's the second thing we check on. And then we have the social triggers. What other people think of us is very important. So when you make a decision and you don't get feedback from your friends or your relatives, then you lose your trust in yourself, but also in the brand. So actually, that's why we like the likes on Facebook. You take a risk, you post something, and then you read. Come on, give me the likes. The more likes, the better it feels. So that's the reward thing. And then you have the post decision. So it's the prefrontal cortex thing. So you're going to analyze what you have done, and you create arguments to defend the decision. So if we go back to the branding part, so it starts with perception. Yeah, that's the first thing you see. It's about attention. It's worth money, because attention is very important, even in the social media businesses. The longer you stay on Facebook, the more money you make for Facebook. This is about attention. You pay attention to the content of Facebook. It's very important. So identity is also a form of perception. It's very important. If you're abroad and you can read this language, then you still know that's Coca-Cola. So it's very powerful. Identity is one of the most powerful things to have. Your brand name is the most important, because you can speak it and you can write it down. And then the logo, so the identity. And of course you have the mental identity, but that's coming on later. So identity is a form of trust. And you have even a halo effect. So when you see this box, this cooler, and because you see the logo of the identity of Coca-Cola, this trust even extrapolates to the content of that cooler. So you trust the brands within. And of course, that's exactly what Coca-Cola wants, because all the brands are also owned by the Coca-Cola company. So that's why they do it. So let's do a little test. Okay, I will show you something. It's very short, so pay attention. There we go. Okay, what did you see? Yeah, okay. Mostly this, yeah? This is how the brain works. Holy moly! Yeah, well, you missed that one, right? And Huckleberry, because this is about the connections in the brain. You have much more connections, shortcuts in the brain from Ben & Jerry's than from the other brands. And this goes in milliseconds. Your brain knew within 100 of milliseconds, of 13 milliseconds, that there was Ben & Jerry, before you knew it. So your reaction is actually very late on. Yeah? You have analyzed it, you know, that's the fiber to the visual cortex, but the shortcut was already made. So you recognize the brand and the brand feels familiar. This is the first form of trust, of course. And this motivates you to see it again, because this was easy. Oh, I recognize that brand. So the next time you see it, it's much more easy. So, well, I don't use that brand because I recognize it already. So, and this is called affordance. That something totally matches with your own belief system. So, but therefore you need knowledge. Otherwise, you can't create these connections in the brain. So this is about positioning. First thing you use is semantic memory. This all with language. Has to do all with language. And this way you build associations in the brain. And the stronger the connections between the associations, the stronger the decision set that you're going to make. So I will show that. So if you talk about brand superiority, it's very important also for neuromarketing. This is the strongest place that you can own in people's heads. And this is also about as a personal trust guidance. Every time you buy something and it's good, you're going to buy it again. So you strengthen the connections between those brand associations. This is a very simple form of a semantic memory network of Coca-Cola. I use Coca-Cola because everyone knows the brand, so I don't have to explain it. So what all the brands do, they invest in creating these semantic network memories because it's very valuable. If you created this one, you made an investment to learn it, it stays on for the rest of your life. So within 30 years, you can activate this within a split second. This is Ben & Jerry's, what I showed you in a split second. So, and this is what we call brand equity. It's the trust and the knowledge you have in your brain, in all people's heads. And it's not owned by the brand company. So that's the funny part. You know? They call it their own equity, but actually it isn't, because it's in your head. Think about it. So, I love this image. So, what you see here is a slide of the brain. This is such a fantastic organ. I love it. But what you see here is the gray matter and the white matter. These are all axons, that are the parts of the neuron that can be very long, and it connects the cortex with the older system, the limbic system. So that's very important. This is the cerebellum, but you can forget that one for now. So, and these travels very fast. So when you think of something like a semantic network, it's not from here to here to here, but it makes connections with the hippocampus for another part. And it goes very fast, about 450 kilometers an hour. So it travels very fast. So this is actually what you do. If you think about something, let's say a brand, or your sister or brother, or it doesn't matter anything, or an object, or this phone, then you make constantly connections between those associations. And this is the essence of brand positioning. It's the position of a brand relative to other brands, because you always make you compare brands with other brands in the consumer's mind. And it is very clustered. So you have different forms of information clustered together within the cortex. They have all places, and you can see that in the different colors. So, and what happens when you think of something, then the strongest brand, so if I say insurance company, what's the first thing you pops up in your mind? Well, then Achmea for you is top of mind. So you have the strongest connections between the brand and the semantic network memory about insurance. So this is how it works. And then when it makes connection, it branches out, and this is the form also from the cortex. I think this is beautiful, but okay. So here it makes connections, and therefore you can think. You're aware of yourself, and it's all happening in those cells. So, and when you have brands that are very different from each other, because that's the way why you're positioning, to differentiate you from another brand, it's very easy. So you see here Coca-Cola and Pepsi, you know, the different brands. But then if you have new branches, new extensions, it's becoming much more difficult. So Coca-Cola Life and Pepsi Next, do you know those products? Very diffuse. So they even taste almost the same. But we don't go there. So what you see here, of course, are the neural cells. They travel very fast, about 450 miles an hour, or kilometers an hour, and they communicate with each other, not with electric signals, but with chemicals. So it's an electrochemical system. And what you see here is the synapse cleft. It's very important because it's not the electricity that's between those in the cleft, but it are the neurotransmitters and hormones. So there are four very important, and that's why I mentioned this in this lecture. There's dopamine, there's endorphin, serotonin, and oxytocin. They were very famous neurotransmitters and hormones. So dopamine is the seeker in you. It sees opportunities. So when you see something and you like that, you think, okay, I'm going for that chance. Then you have endorphins. It's also part of all drugs, what you see here. It's a feeling of hope. I can win this race. It's also called the runner's high. So when you go on and go on and go on, you're working in a rush, then it's a lot of endorphins. So that's why it's also an MDMA, so you can dance for hours. Then you have serotonin. It slows down. So the dopamine and the endorphins are uppers, and then you have, of course, the downers. And the serotonin is a downer. And this is more about confidence in yourself, but also in others. It's a form of leadership. You can make appointments and agreements with other people and say, we're going to do this. Yeah, we're going to do this. That's serotonin. And of course, you have oxytocin. And this is also called the cuddle hormone. It's very important for trust building within social relationships. So a mother or a father cannot love their children when they don't have oxytocin. So these four, I call this the happy chemicals. You need all those four and you have to have a really good life. So the uppers are mostly for the short time, for the short term. So dopamine is about chances. When you win a lottery or when you gamble, it's all dopamine. And you have the long term, okay, it's a long term trust. So this is about behavior. So when you have if you have a nice experience, actually what happens is that you have a positive emotional response. So you do something and you get positive feedback. It's very important. So you training yourself in a new sport. Every time it works, then you will reward it, and that's a positive emotional response. So that's for a good experience. So brands need to give you a positive experience because it's also best remembered. So the strongest connections in the brain are emotional connections. So not the semantic, but the emotional connections. So when you have a conversation like this, or I'm talking, at the end of this hour, you walk out the door and you probably forget everything that I told you. But the feeling you have, you can remember for 30 years. So that's a big difference. So if you want to invest in a brand, and the brand invests in you, then they want to evoke positive emotional response. So this is what happens when you're building a brand. On the short term, you give people rewards. Don't wait that long. And when you do it over and over again, then you build trust because you give people positive emotional response. So the brand is like a trust intermediary. So good experience, trigger emotion and reward, but not fear. So you have to avoid fear because the brain hates fear. So it's not about knowing. It's not only about the semantic memory. It's about what you feel because those memories are long-lasting. And they create a safe way to trust the brand. So this is a way of trust behavior. I have a little movie, and it's not new, but I like it anyway. But it shows the 3 parts of trust I'm going to show afterwards. So what's important about this movie? Of course, it's marketing. But this is not about branding, it's about social connection. All those people communicated with each other. They're asking a positive emotional response from each other. Not from the vending machine, yeah, but from each other. That's a very important factor if you build a trustworthy brand. So this is the mental loop that you can use if you build brands. So first is the willingness to take risk. So you have to make the first step. It's also in a new relationship. There's always someone has to take the first step. And you have to act. And when you do these actions, they are driven by emotions. You want to have a new partner. You want to have new clothes. There's always a motive. Without motive, there is no action. And when you do this action, and it works out well, then you have a positive emotional response. It's very important because it creates dopamine in the brain. So it says, okay, I'm going to do this another time. So, and when you do this, so you have the reward of dopamine, that's called affirmation. So when you do something right, you have a positive emotional response. and it works out well, then you are affirmative. So it's reinforcing your beliefs. And when you do it over and over again, you become an addict of your own behavior. Routine behavior is a form of addiction. And then you become reliant. So if you create behavioral patterns, it's very hard to break behavioral patterns, because they give you the feeling and you don't have to think. And our brain wants you not to think. It's the 95%. So, and if you do that, if you becoming reliant, then you have more willingness to take another risk, to take another action, to buy a new product, another product, an extension. So this goes on and on and on. Is this ethical? Well, it's an interesting question. I think if you do this with the right intentions, yeah, it shouldn't be a problem. So if we talk about trust, first thing about trust is very important. It's about risk taking. Are you willing to take risk, and are you want to become vulnerable for the actions of another party? So that's the basis, the essence of trust, personal trust. So, and you have three natural forms of trust. So this is what I do. This is also about my research. You have cognitive trust, this is behavioral trust, it's implicit, you're not aware of, like the core dancer. You have cognitive trust, so rational trust, this is about reasonable, this is about reason. And you have effective emotional trust. So what you saw here in this movie, they were all the three forms. It's effective trust, also social feedback, positive emotional response. You have to act a kind of behavior, and of course you have to know what to do. This is cognitive trust. So I have them here lined out. So it's rational calculated, so you can say this is a good price for my product. There's also cognitive rational trust. It's very semantic, so you have to you can search for the right words to name it. It's very explicit. And it's very important for brand reputation, because you have to communicate to other people how great this brand is. So then you have effective emotional trust, and this is more intuitive. So it's more implicit, and it's also episodical. So it's about experiences in your life. So you have to build it up. And it's about empathy. If you don't feel that you don't have empathy, then you cannot connect, not to a brand, not to other people. So it's very important. And then you have, of course, cognitive behavioral trust. So it's more unconscious and routine. This is what you do over and over again, and it's implicit. And this is also about affordance. It's very important for user experience. And then we have the we form of trust. So the other one was the me. It's about personal experiences. Can I trust you? Can I trust a brand? Can I trust an organization? Can I trust a company? And it's the relationship with another. And you have to identify that other organization. That's why identity is so important. This is the leap of faith, where I started my lecture with. Yeah? You see something, can I trust that first impression? I have my action. So, and this is that the other party will do no harm. This is the essence of trust. When the other party break your trust, then the trust relationship will be broken. So this is very important for companies. So if you look at the new organizations of the 21st century, these are the main goals that they should achieve. So it's economic trust. This is a promise what you do as a brand. That can be a promise on the long term. It's social trust, because you never have a relationship with the brand alone, but also with your friends and your family and your relatives. It's very important. And it's about your organizational. So how do they behave? How sustainable are these companies? It's very important. So this is also one of the outcomes of my research. So I'm almost finished, so then you know where we are. People don't use a product because they have to, because we have free will. Well, we think we have free will. Let's think of the 95%. So, but it's how this makes you feel. That's the real reason why you use brands. So, and these are the neurotransmitter systems, what I talked about. This is the drugs in your head, you know? You don't have to take drugs. All the drugs in the world is already in your brain. Did you know that? How cool is that? So, but now, of course, you have to stir it up. Well, that's another point. Of course, you can use other means, but you can also create it for yourself. So I'm going to prove to you tonight that I actually, with a little experiment, I can show you that you have your own drugs in your head. Do you like that? So, how does it work? Well, for the people from psychology, they know all the Skinner box, of course. And a couple of years later, in 1965, they made an adjustment on that one, and they have a little rat, and they built in an implant, an electrode to the limbic system, to the nucleus accumbens, where I started my lecture with. And when you stimulate this with the electricity, then you get high. Then the dopamine rushes in your brain, and it feels very good. It's like heroin. So it's very addictive. So this little rat, he enjoyed it very much. He pushed the lever over and over again till he was dead. It's not social, right? Because this is what addictive behavior is. You know, do you know a friendly junk? So, here, I give my money back to you? No. So actually, they did it with people. They thought it would help epilepsy. Epilepsy. So what they did, they had these electrodes implanted within patients. As you can see, this is very hard with addictive behavior when you try to hold back. So there was one person, he could try it. He has a button like this, a clicker, and he said, "Okay, I can hold it." And within the first hour, he pushed 1,200 times. That's almost the length of an orgasm. So you know. So this is like the heroin rush. Then the second time, well, he likes it even more, 1,500 times. And then the third times, he really, really tried only 900 times. That's a lot, I can assure you. And then they stopped the experiment. So, and they did it also with the women, and it doesn't worked out well. So they asked, well, what was it? This is the happy button. That's what they called it. It's the happy button. So, but I don't think it's a good idea to do it for ourselves, because we cannot keep each other in hand. So, but we have, of course, our own Skinner box. This is well, in this case, the iPhone, but your smartphone. Every time when this bleeps, buzzes, or you get attention, but this is about attention, then you receive a little dopamine rush. Oh, someone is thinking about me. So that's very nice. So that's why we're all addicted at the moment at this phone. So maybe you should try to stay away from the phone for a week. Let's see how this works out. So what happens when you receive a signal from this iPhone or another phone? The locus coeruleus, this is the little green dot over here, is activated because that's becoming active when it finds out something new. It hears a sound, for example, and then it makes on adrenaline, and then it's making serotonin, for example, to analyze what is happening in the supply. I like this quote anyway. So how do you do that? So we have the 4 neurotransmitters, right? So you have the dopamine, you have the endorphin, serotonin, and oxytocin. So the long term I cannot prove right now because it takes time to build up, but the short terms I can. So this is an experiment. They did it with elderly. This is a game, Grand Theft Auto, and they let them play the game. Well, first you get the rational answer, the no dope answer.
That's the good side of what you're seeing. Yes, you can play the tennis and have the fast cars and all that, but are we giving him the message that in order to do that, I have to do all the criminal activities to get that?
All that said, though, Grand Theft Auto games also have been hailed as some of the most revolutionary and critically acclaimed video games of all time.
What's revolutionary about theft and murder?
No, exactly. That's exactly what we expected, right? Rational answer. Oh, they are so right. Now,
I got a gun. Where's the person?
Now they let. We'll get there.
That's the good side of what
So
you're seeing.
we'll get
Yes,
there. So.
I got a.
Okay. Now they let them play the game, and now let's see what happens.
I got a gun. Where's the person? I shot some people.
kill the guy.
You find everything that's wrong with
There
this
you go.
place.
Shoot him again if he's not dead yet. Oh, here's another one. Get her. Okay, now just remember this is make believe. Oh!
What did you do? I decked her. Why? I don't know. I didn't mean to. I wanted to shoot her.
A knife, you're closer to the victim. It's more personal.
You're so dirty.
Uh-oh.
You're a naughty boy. Go.
I hit a woman for the first time in my life. And I'm having fun.
So this is a form of trust. And the little tinkling that you feel right now in your head, that's dopamine. So now you know. So this is actually that they are vulnerable. So they're showing themselves actually who they are. So this is very important. So this, and of course, this is empathy. Yeah, we feel with them. That's why we laugh, and we do that by our mirror neurons. Mirror neurons are also very important for building trust. If you can't feel someone's pain, then you can trust someone else or pleasure. So this is what our brain actually loves: social attention. It's a nice weather. Yeah, this is why we like to drink beer on a terrace on a sunny day with your friends. Because then you have oxytocin, because you have your friends with you. You have dopamine, because you're having fun and laughter. You have endorphin, because you are together and you can rule the world. And of course serotonin, because the sunlight creates serotonin. So so you have all the combination together. So, but of course the main ingredient without can this not exist is of course trust. So that's why trust is very important. So here, this is the wrap up. If you want to build trust, first you need to build strong connections. It can be social connections, but also the neural networks in the brain. And you have evoked positive emotional response with the right neurotransmitters and hormones. And then you have cognitive rational trust for the arguments. Of course, effective emotional trust. Otherwise, you cannot connect emotionally. And of course, you have to trust on your behavior. This cognitive trust. And if you look at that, the society broad vision, of course, it's the economic trust for the long term, because you want to predict consumer behavior in the long term. It's social trust. People should join you in your experience when you use a brand. And of course, the trust in the organization itself is the purpose of the organization. So that was my lecture. Thank you very much.
Well, are there any questions? And then I'll drop by. Does the sound work, by the way? Yeah? Okay.
Okay. Hi. Well, I think it's very interesting how learning works in this context. So how can you change a positive balance to a negative and the other way around? Do you also did research on that?
You mean the learning curves, or?
Yeah. For example, we have Coca-Cola and everybody likes it, but then you learn after a time, okay, the company has, it's not healthy, and they have strange politics towards water in a third world or stuff like that. Yeah. So that changes also this emotional attachment you have to it. So, but how are how easy is it to change that?
Well, it's very. This is about reputation management. So, when we all agree that a company or a brand is good, then it shouldn't be a problem. But when our negative actions from the organization itself, so bad employee management or spoiling the environment, of course, then the knowledge still remains in the brain. So all the shortcuts are there, but the trust is gone.
Okay.
So you know the name, but you don't buy the product. Yeah.
But there's no way yet to or measure how fast this is happening, or how easy you can bring down a brand, or
within seconds.
Within seconds. Okay.
Yeah. Because when I use an app and it's not working.
Yeah.
I say shit app.
Okay.
So Yeah.
Even though the brain is so hardwired by then, because it was somehow the point, everything is automated at a certain point, and we can't run out of this system, but in seconds we can also pull it down.
Well,
again.
when a product works over a longer period of time, then you have built trust, all right? So then it's automated behavior. So it worked for a longer time. So when it then stops, then we are more forgiven. You say, okay, it's not working, but okay, give it 3 days.
Okay.
So, yeah. Okay.
Any other questions?
We talked a lot about emotions, so I think of emotional marketing. So how ethical is that from a consumer point of view, maybe?
I think that the emotions are part of life. I mean,
yeah, but if we play on it, like if we're aware of all of this and we play on this on the consumer, how ethical is it?
If you work with the right purpose and you want to do good, then it shouldn't be a problem, right? I mean, I really believe that brands can help society. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I saw another question.
Let's try. So you touched on the topics like ethics and empathy, for example. I would like to know your view on transparency in a brand and also in a company.
Oh, that's a good question. You know, trust is not about transparency. So that's why it's an interesting question. We think that transparency is trust, but transparency is control. And control is the opposite of trust. So, understand this? Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, so, yeah, of course we want to have control. We want to control everything. Yeah, I mean, now when we have children, then we gave them an app and a mobile phone so we can trigger and tracking and tracing them down where they are. That's transparency. But is that trust? No. I think people should have the right to play along.
I think for a long time, this has been a part of marketing, but over time, the tricks change when people become wise to that they're being manipulated. And I'm just curious how you think in the future it'll change. Like, what kind of themes will we see?
That's also an interesting question. I don't believe it at all, because your brain doesn't change. I mean, you're not different than the Roman 2,000 years ago. So they already used marketing tricks. Only today. It's the same right now. So your brain doesn't change, even not in your life, but also the next generation will not change. It's still the same mechanism, the 95%, you know? So yeah, the rational part of you, they say, okay, I can understand this. Okay, this is maybe a trick, but then you fall back in your routine behavior, and you do the same again. But this is more about ethics. Do you want to act like this as a brand organization? That's another question.
But I think like people will see, or like I'm not exactly sure of the progression of marketing, but I think there's more of like a absurdity in marketing nowadays, just to catch the attention, whereas before it might have been more about smiling faces or whatever. Like, do you know the ad with the monkey drummer, or the Old Spice ad? They're like different from what we've seen before. So there must be something changing.
Do you want my personal opinion about this? I think it's a waste of money. I think that marketing in the end will disappear, but brand communication will not disappear, because we need brands, because we want to help in our choices. If you should start tomorrow with a brandless world, imagine, this is a thought experiment, okay? No brands anymore, you win. Okay, what happens? Oh look, this is a nice vest, or a nice jacket. Yeah, who made it? Oh, well, my name is Henry. Oh, cool, Henry. It's a jacket from Henry. Well, the first brand is born. So it's very hard to live without brands in the world.
In your talk, you said that 95% of decisions are made unconsciously. Do you know how they came to that number?
Well, no. No. That's why I said I don't know exactly.
Yeah.
So what they did was they did some experiments with people, and they just observed them. Were they aware of their decisions? So let's say because you have different memory systems in your brain, right? You have your semantic memory, episodical memory, procedural memory. Yeah. So that's why you can bicycle or drive a car and have a conversation. So now I'm asking you: are you aware of driving a car at the moment, or are you busy with your brain at the conversation?
Yeah, so I would say it's very difficult to arrive to that number, right? It's kind of a guess.
I totally agree. But this is a way to make it visible.
Yeah. Yeah, especially difficult because consciousness is not yet defined in psychology, I think. That's
trust either. Trust doesn't exist in psychology. For the people that do psychology, if you have your book, psychology books, look at trust. If you find one, maybe 10 sentences, this is it. It's very strange. I think trust is very complex, but it should more studied more. So, and even consciousness. But I think that consciousness is one of the huge mysteries of this time. So yeah, we don't know. So.
I have a kind of an opposite question. What would be the best way to use these kind of techniques to let people lose trust in a particular brand or so?
The easiest way?
But the best way. And they typically say trust comes by food and goes by horse or something like that. So that in some sense it should be easy. So what would be the easiest, most effective way to let people lose trust in whatever brand they trust?
There is no one trick. You know?
Okay,
so sometimes people tried really to break up the relationships, and still the people still believe in those brands, still believed in those persons. Even the trust was already broken many times, and they still believed. They still made that leap of faith. So sometimes it's very easy to break that trust. Just break your promise. Yeah. But sometimes it's very hard. Yeah.
So the new Pepsi ad, the one with
Wait for me.
Where she takes a Pepsi bottle and goes up to these. They try to show that Pepsi is breaking a war or a conflict, civil conflict, and that really broke people's trust because they used a negative. They tried to sell too hard.
Well, yeah, but this is the marketing. I think he also means. This is not about the brand itself. Yeah. So. Yeah.
You mentioned a couple of times the relationship between brands and ethics. So where do you think we should draw the line? Now there is more information available about consumers than ever before. So if you had to, what would be, what is definitely unethical behavior in terms of brand communication?
First I want to point out I'm not talking about brands and being unethical. This is about neuromarketing and being unethical. So that's the difference. I think that a brand is just a mental construct in the brain. So I don't have values with that. It's like when I show you this phone, the machine, the product itself, it's just a mental construct in the brain. You have no knowledge, you know the names, you have a mental memory, semantic network, so that's okay. But if I'm gonna misuse the information to influence you in a bad way, that's unethical. So when I know that you have fear for something and I'm gonna use that fear to trigger you in buying a product, I think that's not cool. That's exactly what Facebook does. Facebook makes you addict. Way heavy. So. No.
Thanks. Thank you for your talk. I'm wondering if we're responding to brands on a gut level, like a unconscious level mostly, then how come some people are more brand responsive or obsessed by branding compared to other people? We all know those people who love brands, brand this, brand that, and other people don't respond as such. And if we're all the same on the basic level, how come some people respond in a different ways? Does that have to do with different type of receptors, or do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I also research personality. And one of the things is when people are very insecure, I have to be careful with my words now, but when people are very insecure, they seek trust marks. So when I'm wearing this monkey suit, yeah, I know that people are going to respond in another way to me. So yeah, this is buying your identity. I think a lot of people buying their identity, they won't admit it, but that's exactly what we do. We think we're all individual and unique, yeah? But no one is here looking like a clown. So we're wearing, everyone knows exactly what to wear, what are the right clothes, even you. So, and also me, so yeah. Because that's safe, because our brain is very keen on safety. So staying in the herd, being unique, but safely in the herd. So.
Thank you. Do you also have some knowledge about how subliminal advertising would work, and do you have ideas about that?
Oh yay. Well, that's an old question though, but you get a lot of stimuli every day, and you're aware of only a few %. So, is there all the information that you don't get? Is that subliminal? You know, so when you make a subliminal message, I think that's a waste of money, because the chance is huge that everyone will miss it. So be clear and direct, be honest and authentic in what you want to say. Well, yeah, but it is about ethics. Yeah. So playing with, so for brand communication at young children, yeah, that's unethical.
Do you think a company has any possibility to break the consumer's trust in its competitors?
I think that's illegal. Narrative advertising is only allowed in certain countries, and they have very clear and strict laws about it. You can't really talk about another brand and try to denigrate it. It's not allowed.
And besides that, I think that's a very bad strategy. You have to build your brand on your own strength.
But if you, well, it's not smart, I think, but if you want to bring a new brand of cola into the market, how can you break there's no way actually to break the trust people have in Coca-Cola.
Well, first, the question you have to ask yourself, do the people need a new kind of Coca-Cola? Of cola, sorry. So that's the first question. And then, if there is space in the market, then it's all about positioning. So claim your domain. So you have your semantic networks. Which parts of the domains are free? So you build your brand strategy from there. But never fight with already strong connections built by other brands. That's a waste of money. So.
Hi. So I was wondering, how do I phrase this? So if you had the button with the rat thing, and it presses the button every time you make endorphins release in the brain, if you then put the rat in an identical box but with no wiring, and it pressed the button, would it still happen, like a placebo effect? Would it still think it's going to make it happy, so it would make it happy?
No.
It wouldn't work?
No.
So you couldn't make someone like a brand? You couldn't have that trigger, like every time they say a brand, you make them release some endorphins, so then every time they see the brand.
Yeah, well, but it's a real effect. It's not a placebo effect. Some people are really happy when they buy a product.
But if you if you wired them up to a machine, so every time they saw the Coca-Cola logo, you'd release endorphins to make them think they liked it, and then when you stopped wiring them up, would they still think they liked it?
No. Because if you're not a fan of Coca-Cola, then you will not. Then there is no dopamine release. So I hate Coca-Cola. Sorry. So I don't drink Coca-Cola. It's better. So it doesn't affect me.
There's no conditioning, no Pavlovian conditioning in there?
No, because that's the classic conditioning. If you want a condition, you have the operant conditioning. So it's the learning curve. And that's what we do. This is all conditioning behavior, people. So, yeah, it's very effective, though. Yeah.
But doesn't the rat get some... Doesn't the rat have some response, and then it kind of peters out? Like, for the first few times it presses the button, after it's no longer wired, it thinks that it's getting, or it
but
preempts
the rat, it has to, the implant has to work. No, but
there's been studies on conditioning. I'm pretty sure that, like, once you take away that stimulus, they still feel the stimulus until they know that they're not going to get it anymore. So for a few times, they will have a dopamine response.
That's true. That's a placebo effect, by the way, though.
Okay.
Yeah. Of course, yeah. Yeah, with medicines, they did a lot of studies. So, yeah. Actually, yeah, some people think really that they're taking drugs, but they don't. But they are feeling, well, they think they experience the same feeling. But you have to experience the feeling at first in a real time. Otherwise, you can't remember it, how the feeling was. So, but that's another discussion.
Well, I have a question about Coca-Cola. I was wondering why doesn't Coca-Cola change the names of the new drinks they sort of buy? Why do they remain their, like, the names of the drinks? So why aren't all their drinks called Coca-Cola Orange Juice or Coca-Cola Sprite? Or why does Sprite still has a brand called Sprite?
Well, first you have the Coca-Cola company, that's a holding, and they buy brands. So Sprite is another brand than Coca-Cola, right? So they buy their own portfolio. So, and of course, Sprite is a well-known brand. There's a lot of equity because there's a lot of knowledge in many people's heads, so you don't break that down. So yeah, then you bought, actually, you don't buy the factories, you don't buy the employees, you don't buy the distribution network. What you buy actually is the brand name, and partly the identity. So the brand name Sprite is much more worth than.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
I have one question. Every person in this room is a brand, and every person in this room represents a set of skills that they will connect with a potential client or employer at some time, or very soon, or already in their lives. Considering they're amazing at what they do, all of them, what is the number one thing that you would advise them or ask them to remember for themselves as a brand walking out of this room?
Yeah, do good. Do good. Yeah. Yeah. Now, I mean, what do you want me to say? I think that everyone is unique. Yeah, of course, we know that. And everyone has his own personality. So you have to find your own way anyway. But I think the one common, what is a placeholder in this world, what we really need, that's we do good. I really believe that.
No questions?
Okay.
I'm amazed by the amount of questions that you guys have.
Yeah, well.
It's really nice. Well, I guess that was it, right? So, we have a small gift.
All right.
Bottle of wine. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Well, if you should have any question, you can contact me. So, okay, thank you. Okay.
If you'd like to join more of our lectures, please keep an eye on the UCG website because we promote our lectures there. So, thank you.